Chuck, can you believe all the things that are happening in our Canadian military today?
Would it make sense for me to say no?
It does actually make
Oh.
sense for me to say no.
Wow.
Every time I think I'm informed, I realize how many more things I need to read about to actually be informed.
Yeah, it's like a decision tree. It just keeps growing and growing and growing.
Yeah. So we actually talked just before we started this podcast about all the different topics and the unbelievability of how many things we could bring into the conversation today. But if I had to really just go, what I think you and I could really rip apart and have fun with, it's the new defense team industry. And we could take that in 100 different directions.
Yeah.
This pairing up.
Yeah.
If you again said to me 3 months ago, Martin, there's going to be huge amounts of Canadian will
Yeah. No.
to move it. No,
Wouldn't have
I'm
believed.
not.
No.
Sorry. Did you have too much at New Year's? That's
Yeah. Exactly.
And yeah, here we are. So, thoughts on the news, thoughts on the announcement, thoughts on what you think are our next steps?
So I won't try and guess what our next steps are, with the possible exception that I think it won't be long before this government announces that we're getting closer to some industrial agreements with European arms manufacturers. I think there's been some hinting at that. We've already allocated money for more ammunition because people are waking up to the fact that it's great to have a weapon that fires 1 billion rounds a second. When you've only got 30 rounds in store, you're going to need a lot more. So, but when you visited today, I was talking to my elder son, Quentin. Hey, Q, you need to listen to more of these. And we were talking about an idea that had struck me, having listened to a podcast. There was a Brit who triggered something in me. And I actually wrote a post about this a couple of weeks back. And the concept was Canada could become Europe's arsenal. And I know that there would be a lot of folks out there, probably not listening to this podcast, but a lot of Canadians who are trapped by the idea that, well, our military is peacekeeping. We don't need to build more weapons. We need to have more peace. And God bless them, right? They have good hearts. What they don't have is an understanding of what the world is actually like. And the old Roman adage that if you want peace, prepare for war. And we have ignored that for too long. We have not been preparing for war because it's a horrible thing to prepare for, right? And for those people who don't know a lot of military people, when you meet military people, inevitably, I'm sure you've had this experience, Marty, when you meet somebody at a cocktail party or a Christmas dinner, or, your kid is on a school play and you sit next to somebody and you shake hands. And, oh, what do you do? Oh, what do you? And they make the comment like, wow, I didn't know anybody in the military before, but you don't seem like a warmonger. And the answer is, well, no, I know very, very few people in the military of any stripe who are warmongers because we know how horrible it is. That said, we have a country that is, in my opinion, uniquely placed to become a powerhouse where the Americans have sadly broken the trust that used to exist with all of their friends and allies. It'll come back. But to quote, who was it that I heard say this the other day? The James Mattis, 4-star Marine. Trust rides out on a racehorse and comes back at a slow walk. So the next administration, no doubt, whoever the president is, will try to rebuild trust, confidence, alliances. But that's 3 years from now, and there's a lot of space between now and then. And Europe needs to rebuild its arms industries and re-equip all of its militaries, RFN. So some of the examples that I heard in my listening to different podcasts was things like, Ehrlichon, the air defense gun guy, they're behind. They can't produce them fast enough. The missiles, the guns. Dassault, the French jet maker, makes the Rafale, which is a Generation 5.5 jet, and Europeans love it and they want them. And Dassault has something like a backlog on their books of 1,300 jets. They just can't make them fast enough. Krauss-Maffei, they make the Leopard tank. And one of the reasons that European armies are now going to Korean tanks is because the Koreans have made a Krauss-Maffei knockoff in the Leopard 2, and they call it the KT. And I've never been in one, but I've seen some of the performance tests, and it looks like a pretty good tank. So Krauss-Maffei would like to build more tanks, but they're tapped out. They don't have the industrial capacity yet, and they're expanding. Like Volkswagen is converting one of their biggest factories to build military vehicles again. And Germans have some experience doing this. So I thought to myself, well, we're perfectly disposed to do this. We are multilingual, officially bilingual. So, want to build French jets with a French company? Yeah, invest the money in Dorval or wherever, and you don't need to train anybody. Everybody speaks French or English. You want to build things and you want your training crews to come over and they speak German but broken English. Well, put them on the prairies. Lots of folks speak German, right? Or put them in southwestern Ontario, right? Because everybody's grandparents were German. So we've got a highly educated populace. We have good, solid work ethics. We have unlimited natural resources. You need a lot of aluminum. You need a lot of steel. You need a lot of electronics. You need a lot of nickel, right? Molybdenum. We have all those things. And we need markets because we want to make more of that stuff. So we should go to Europe. Now, I think the Prime Minister's already ahead of me. He just hasn't announced it because he has pushed us to join a couple of organizations that nobody outside of Europe belongs to. We've been allowed into an organization. It's like a defense bank where all the countries chip in, and then you're a company that wants to build military weaponry, you get a interest-free loan from this bank. And, we're talking hundreds of millions of euros. And we have a free trade agreement now with the European Union. We're the first country to pull that off. So everything's being put in place. So what's stopping us? The optimist in me would say nothing. The realist in me would say, well, there's a bit of pushback from all those people who don't want to see us become an arms manufacturer. I get it. Okay. And there are those people that say, well, it's not so easy as that, Chuck, because, you have to design things from scratch and then you have to develop them and you have to test them. And my reply to that is, no, you don't. I'm not talking about us developing a new fighter jet. I'm not talking about recreating the Avro Aero experience. Right? That takes decades. What I am talking about is saying, Bombardier, that already deals with Dassault, says, yeah, we'd love to help you build more Rafales, but we don't want to build the whole plane. What do you need? Like, what is your point of failure where it stops the production of your airplanes and you need more of those? Engines, landing gears, ailerons, the electronics in the cockpit. We can do that and ship them over to you, and you just drop them into your fighter, and that could double, triple your production rate. Same thing with Krauss-Maffei. What do you need, right? You need someone to make track pins in high quality molybdenum steel. That's us. We can do that, right? Things like that. Same thing with our shipyards, right? We've finally woken up from our nightmare of letting Davies shipyards go down the tubes. And, I can't name them all, but we used to have the fourth largest Navy in the world, all of which we built ourselves. So, but our shipyards right now they're ramping up because the Royal Canadian Navy needs dozens of ships. But we don't need to build ships for Europe. We can build sea drones for Europe. We can build bridge superstructures. We can build all sorts of things that is modular that with European investment, we could do. And it integrates us into the European market. It integrates us into European defense. It sends a signal to the world that we are a reliable partner. It sends a signal to our neighbors to the south that we're not shunning you, but you did this to yourselves. We would love to get back into bed with you, but not like we once did. We don't want to become so deeply embedded in your system that we can't break away.
As you were talking there was two pieces that kept coming to my brain, and it reminded me of something that I think I saw in high school. On one hand is capability.
Yeah.
Are we capable? The simple answer is yes.
Yes.
This country, if you said tomorrow, go do it, do it.
Yeah.
Popular.
Different.
Yeah, very different conversation on Canada being popular in doing that. And it reminded me, I think it was my high school World War II textbook that had a cartoon of Hitler and Stalin shaking hands on a peace agreement. Well, behind them in their back pockets were defense contracts for ammunitions and building up militaries. And I always thought of this as a kid, that it was like, it's so unpopular that these two guys who really shouldn't have had a hard time saying, I'm building a lot of stuff, even they faked it.
Right. Yeah.
Even they faked it. Like, oh no, we're fine. We're all good. Let's have a nice little agreement. Yeah. And their secret, because it was just, I don't want to say it was secret. I mean, obviously the Allies knew, but it wasn't popular enough to say it out loud. Hey, there's threats in this world and we're going to do something about it.
Right.
It's not that we're aggressive. It's that we want to be defensive.
Right.
That space, and you brought up peacekeeping, and Lord knows, as a combat vet, I've had a lot of different, why can't you just be a peacekeeper? Well, if everybody stopped shooting, that'd be great. Yeah. Absolutely. But that's not the world we live in.
It's not. Yeah.
And the 6 o'clock news tells us that every day.
But this takes us back to a concept that we mentioned in a previous podcast, and that is judgment and balance. And the issue is you can rush to either end of any argument to the detriment of your own argument, right? You can say, well, we need to be prepared. Right. Canada needs to allow everybody to arm themselves to the teeth. And that's the American argument that says, well, I need to have a handgun in my home because someone could break in and do me harm. That's true. Yeah, it could happen. But that mentality feeds on itself. Right? You probably live in a neighborhood, if you can afford to buy the firearms that some of these people have, you probably live in a neighborhood that has a zero risk of someone breaking into your house. Now, there are arguments that, I remember one of the weirdest ones I had was, I mentioned him in a previous podcast, which was Doc Broom, the guy I taught with at Norwich, who was a U.S. Army Master Sergeant Armor. And Doc was a handgun instructor. And he taught courses. He lives in the American Midwest. God bless him. And he taught courses on concealed carry. And I remember having a discussion with him, like, Doc, what's the point of concealed carry? He said, well, actually, it works as a deterrent because you don't know who's carrying. I'm like, well, okay, I'm not sure I buy that. Well, he says, yeah, absolutely. You go into a bar and you're carrying a weapon. If it's if concealed carry isn't allowed in that state, then you look around and you're the only one carrying, you might be tempted to do something stupid. But if it's a concealed carry state, the logic is if I pull my weapon, I could have 15 people pull their weapon, and it's going to go sideways real fast. This is an argument that is more emotion than logic. And, taking us back to Canadian defense procurement, yeah, there is a mental, psychological, emotional link between having an arms manufacturing industry in this country and us perpetuating the need to fight, where that's not part of our national character. We don't want to fight if we don't have to. But what people tend to forget is that the other part of our national character is when forced to fight, we're the nastiest guys you ever want to meet. I mean, you've served with foreign militaries, both navies and armies. And you know that one of the reasons that these foreign militaries respect us so much is that if they've been in combat with Canadians, we scare the shit out of them.
Yeah. Yeah. There's a, I love Karate Kid. I love martial arts. And one of the solid tenements there is karate is for defense only. And principle number 1, when he teaches Daniel. But there was an instructor from one of the schools that I was looking at, and they had a take on this, and I really think it is Canada. And it is do no harm, but take no shit. And I think that's a very Canadian way of being. We're not here to harm you. Right. We're also not here to take your shit. And when you give us shit, we give you shit back. And as you talk about our reputation, yeah, I think that is our reputation with our allies. Nobody's here, nobody in the Straits of Hormuz in 2003. Nearly every boat that went through that strait asked for a Canadian boarding party, and I was on that boarding party for much of 2003. We had a great reputation,
right?
And people wanted to do business with us, and we were as fair as we could be. I believe that. Captain and crew, you did an amazing job. That said, we also didn't take shit. Right. We got buzzed every day. We had a lot of people coming by all the time, poking and prodding. Hey, USS Cole was not that far back from our presence there. We were there to do no harm and take no shit. Yep. If we can expand do no harm and take no shit as a Canadian identity, we could really take our industry to the next level, is what I'm thinking. Chuck, what do you think about that?
I think that's exactly right. I think that too often people conflate the weapon with its use. Two different things. Let me give you an example. So as a student in 1986, arriving in Hamburg, just sort of getting my feet under me on how these Germans think about what they do professionally in the military, and got a briefing on the Army. So it was very early in my course, my 2-year course. And there were what, if I remember correctly, there were 111, hard to imagine in today's Army, 111 brigades in the German Army. Okay. And I guess folks saw the look on my face because Canadian Army had 4, right? And we're damn proud of them, right? And I said, 111 brigades, holy shit. And I remember talking to the colonel and saying, so did I hear that right, Colonel? You have 33 tank brigades? And he said, yes. Why? I said, but the Bundeswehr is by definition a defensive military. You are not allowed to cross the border. You are not allowed to engage out of area, which in NATO means you can't go outside the NATO area even for an exercise. Okay. He said, that's all true, but why are you confused? I said, well, 33 Leopard brigades as a defensive force? He said, Major Olivero, you are confusing the weapon with the intent. Tanks are not offensive. Tanks are not defensive. Tanks are a weapon. The commander decides how to use them. And, that's one of those little epiphanies you have as you're learning things. And I thought, That had honestly never occurred to me before. I always thought, okay, in Canada, tanks are seen as offensive. And when we lay down a defensive position, we don't put tanks in the defense. We put them in the rear and they roll up forward when needed, right? Germans thought that was idiotic. Why would you not put them right up front? So I think it's a question, it takes us back to a theme that you and I talk about a lot, education. If the government does go this way, and I would like to see them do this, because it would help our military, it would help our society, it would help our industry, they would also have to spend a great deal of effort and time educating communities all across this country and explaining, listen, because we're building weapons doesn't mean that we are going to become the bad guys. We're helping people be ready if the bad guys decide to do something stupid. Right? That's the difference, I think.
Yeah, I always come back to the triangle when you're looking at ROE. When I'm looking at should I engage, shouldn't I engage? Well, is there a weapon capability?
Yeah.
Is there a proximity? Can that weapon create harm?
Yeah.
And then that third one, which is intent.
Yes.
Because the first two are easy.
Yeah.
The first two are my eyeball. Every security camera can tell you whether there's capability and proximity.
Yep.
Intent. That's the tough one. It's the tough one on the field, and it's the tough one to explain to people.
Yes.
How do you know when and when not to? And certainly you can have all of those there and still choose not to. I had all three on a few different occasions where I didn't fire and we talked it down. Right? De-escalation is still a technique to be used until escalation is required.
Yep.
And we're good de-escalators as Canadians. In general, we really talk a good game. Our government is doing a great job with allies.
Yes.
Okay. Where other nations are choosing them first, we're doing a great job with allies. Hi, would you like to be my friend?
Right.
A Canadian friend is a very valuable friend.
I'll say, yeah.
And in the do no harm but take no shit, we look after our friends.
We should put that on a flag.
And we really have. It's not my saying. I didn't come up with it. I just happen to love it. But I think in general, we really, when we can wrap our brains around that intent is to do no harm.
Yes.
Intent is to do no harm. We're not making these things too hard. Right. We're making these things in case. In the same way, all through this area, we're in British Columbia. I could name 5 different fire stations, all within a very close geographic area. Yeah. Why do I have 5? Do we need that many? Is there that many fires really? I don't pretend to know. Maybe we don't have enough. If I'm saying that poorly, please to my friends in firefighting, don't think that's. But we consciously, as a system, know I need this system set up in case.
In case, yeah.
And this is the in case on the defense side, and we're waking up to that. What would you suggest the education be? If you could educate the entire Canadian public with your next words, what's the message?
Wow. I would say, please understand that just because we are preparing for the worst doesn't mean that we are inviting the worst. Right? We have to be prepared. And if it doesn't come to pass, outstanding. Right? If we build all these weapons and we never even turn them on and they expire because they're rusting into the ground, excellent. But better to have them and not use them than need them and not have them.
Beautifully said. And if you are part of our industry here in Canada, and this is a space you want to get into, encouraging you to think about what you just said, Chuck, because everyone's going to need a PR plan.
Yeah.
And I think you just laid it out beautifully.
Well, thanks. But don't call me because that's all I know. Unless you need tank training, then call me.
Yes. It's not trademarked, but if you do want to use it, at least throw us a recommendation.
Buy us a coffee.
Yeah. Take us out we're Canadians. Take us out for a beer. We are Italians though, so a wine would be preferred. Thank you, Chuck, for another wonderful podcast.
Thank you, Marty. Take care.